You've asked me to present on a topic, and the bulk of my work in the last 4 years around the topic of Freemasonry hasn't actually been with Masons. It's been with autistic people. And one of the gaps in a charity that I founded years ago, one of the gaps in our service providing, we provide bridge services for K through 12 students in public schools whose schools aren't able to accommodate their various needs. One of the things that I found with the boys that we help is no one was teaching them how to be a man. And myself coming from the Scottish Rite classroom, I know that, as well as you know, that the Freemasonry is a perfect academy for young men to grow into mature masculine men. And so in 2010, I did a master's thesis at Woodbury University in Burbank, taking the Lodge of Perfection in the Scottish Rite, 1 through 14, and illustrating how Pike laid down the degrees as a perfect course in leadership for men. So that was my master's thesis. I published it. Version 2 started in about 2015. I took it out of book form and made it into an e-learning, micro-learning series called Revitalize. So Revitalize presents the 3 great lights. I'm actually kind of plagiarizing from myself. I've taken all of the esoteric stuff out of the course for the charity, Toaster Abbey. But I also have the original version with all of the masonry in it. And so I wanted to give a bit of context on where this is coming from. The context of the 3 great lights, when I speak on this, I speak within the realm of the first degree of masonry, within the onboarding experience where you've taken a new brother, you've initiated him, and now you're giving him that initial instruction about the culture and the climate of Freemasonry and the climate and culture of your lodge. That's why I asked you what's going on at Elysian. And so you all, as either past masters, current masters, or future masters, will have to enculturate, if you will, the newly obligated brother into this culture. And we are a very symbolic culture. One of the things I absolutely love about Freemasonry is everything is symbols. Everything is symbols, and we dive deeper in. It's like an artichoke. The more we peel off, the more we find, the more delicious it is. Right. And we, within the lectures of the degrees, within the presentations of the degrees, we do kind of a drive-by service, right? And so I just kind of want to explore this a little bit because the 3 great lights are absolutely fundamental to the things that we do. So I just wanted to share that slide to explain kind of where this all came from. We'll go back, and so we can kind of see each other, and you can see my gesticulations and occasional quenching of thirst. But we know the 3 great lights as the fundamental objects of Freemason. To the uninitiated, doesn't mean anything. Right? To my kids listening, it doesn't mean anything. But to a brother, we know these fundamental objects as a way of life. Right? Their importance are highlighted when the Worshipful Master directs the attention to the 3 great lights during their ritual exemplification. If you're familiar with the Hermeticist and astrologer C.C. Jane, Benjamin Parker Williams, he noted that the 3 great lights of Masonry are the Bible, or the oral law, which contain in its symbolism the knowledge gained by investigating nature's laws in the remote past. The compass and square, or written law, represent the actual forces of nature. The square relates to the physical world and the realm of effects, and the compasses relate to the inner planes, the realm of causes. Together, they embrace all of natural law and exemplify the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. All right, so let's explore these, beginning with the volume of Sacred Law. So in lodges chartered by the UGLE, the United Grand Lodge of England, the Worshipful Master would explain that the most important of these 3 great lights is the volume of Sacred Law, an indispensable part of the lodge. The open Bible signifies that we should all regulate our conduct according to it. The teachings are to rule and guide our faith, a symbol of man's acknowledgement of his relationship to deity. During the ceremony, Those assembled will be informed that it teaches us the important duties that we owe to God, to our neighbor, and to ourselves. The candidate is informed that the volume of sacred law is the unerring standard of truth and justice, and that it is to rule and to govern our faith. The oldest Masonic documents that I can find make absolutely no reference to the Bible, possibly because no part of the Bible was printed in English prior to 1525. And the first complete Bible in English was not printed until 1535. At this point in history, the Bible was rarely found outside of the church. The term volume of sacred law, or VSL as we see it abbreviated oftentimes, first appeared in the old charges in the Grand Lodge No. 1 manual script of 1583 as an essential part of the equipment of an operative lodge. So the volume of sacred law is the greatest of the three great lights. It's considered that it pours forth light from the east across the lodge. But what's light? In Masonic culture, we say that light means knowledge. And the volume of sacred law records the oral law, or the will of God. So from this book, the teachings are conveyed. It symbolizes trust, justice, and the way in which Masons are to conduct their lives by the divine precepts contained in those books, in those 66, or depending on your faith. It's a very compact library of this wonderful knowledge. So for hundreds of years, Freemasons have applied its teachings. Now, what secrets do we have in the square and the compasses? The square is prominent throughout the rituals and ceremonies of Freemasonry, and it is the second of the great lights. It is normal for this implement to be displayed with the compasses. During the initiation ceremony, the candidate is informed that the square should remind him of his conduct in life. The importance of the square cannot be understated, as that it's the emblem that is associated with the master of the lodge, being the implement which forms the rood and proves the perfect mass, is well applied by the master to inculcate the purest principles of piety and virtue. Masonically speaking, it should be the guide of all of our actions. This comes from the Board of Installed Masters of the United Grand Lodge. From time immemorial, the square has represented right and honesty. For Freemasons, the square represents morality. Alongside the volume of sacred law, it reminds Freemasons that the Grand Architect provides instruction to man to develop his moral and spiritual character, while the square reminds us that we must constantly test our behavior by that square. Freemasonry is not about regurgitating ritual and its ceremonies. It's a way of life, a way of being, a way of operating, allowing the Mason to act by the moral and ethical code as set out in our rituals and in our liturgy and in our legenda. Within each of us, we have our own square, our own conscience. And we apply this to every thought, to every word, to every deed. Brings us to the compasses. The third of the great lights is the compasses, plural, singular, right? Compass or compasses. The United Grand Lodge of England Book of Constitutions, Basic Principles for the Grand Lodge Recognition, in item 6 clearly states that the three great lights of Freemasonry, namely the volume of sacred law, the square, and the compasses, shall always be exhibited when the Grand Lodge or subordinate lodges are at work, the chief of these being the volume of sacred law. Thus, I tend to refer to them as such, the compasses. The compasses are here to educate Masons in the duty that we owe to ourselves. We are taught that we must keep our desires within due bounds, circumscribing our desires as we practice self-reverence, self-control, self-restraint. And without such a restraint on our mind and our deeds, it would lead our lives into chaos. Restraint is needed to ensure that there is a balance between our relationship with God, with our neighbors, with ourselves. Thus, the compasses also act as a conduit for the mind. We hear the term daily advancement in Masonic knowledge, and the compasses aid in this. Through the 3 degrees, the position of the compasses on the altar changes, which represents the progressive nature of the instruction of our ritual. So diving deeper, one of the features of my work in Masonry is, what does this all mean? Why is this important? And as with everything in Masonry, there are surface, the literal meanings, and then there are multiple layers of symbolism attached to the objects of the lesson within. So as above, so below. There's an author I happen to like. He's out of Madrid. His name is Richard Casaro. And he wrote of the symbolism of the square and the compasses. What secrets does it hold? What mysteries does it enshrine? The answer is the Masonic square and compasses relate a powerful ancient wisdom now lost. It is the symbol of man, of you, and of I. More specifically, it symbolizes both of our outside and our inside. But what exactly does that mean? Our outside and our inside. It means that every human being is made up of two parts. There is the part that we see when we look in the mirror each day. But there's also the part that we don't see. The part you see is your body. The part you don't see is your soul. The square symbolizes your body, the part you see. The compasses symbolize your soul, the part you don't see. When placed together, the compasses and the square, designed to teach us that we are more than just the body, more than just the part that we see. Deep down underneath it all, we are an eternal soul, which we don't see. Now, what does all this mean? There is a lesson that we are trying to deliver in this portion of the first degree, and it has to do with the 3 R's: rules, respect, and repercussions. One of the lessons that we learn as leaders in business and leaders in the community, leaders in our lodge, is the importance of making rules and following through with it. This is the expectation setting that happens early in the initiation process. Candidates are presented with the rules, volume of sacred law, as well as the penalty for violating the rules. Right? There's no ambiguity in this presentation. It's kind of gruesome, in fact. And as such, it is a model practice for those who would lead. In business, leaders reward people who follow the rules and achieve their goals and establish consequences for those who do not. You don't meet your sales quota, what happens? You don't deliver on an important deadline, what happens? Consistently communicating the benefits of staying within the established guidelines versus the challenges of driving outside the guardrails gives everyone the best chance to succeed in life. Circumscribe your desires. Keep your passions within due bounds. At home and raising children, it's important to teach our children to respect authority, to understand expectations, and to realize that there are repercussions, good or bad, for either meeting those expectations or not. We do our kids a disservice if we ignore the rules we set at home, because there's very little chance of that happening elsewhere in their lives. In the lodge, as in life, it is important that we clearly communicate what behaviors we expect in order to create as much positive energy as we can. As leaders, it is our job to make sure everybody knows what the rules are, how to respect them, and what the repercussions will be when the rules are broken. When expectations are vague, or when they're not communicated plainly, it creates confusion and an unnecessary negative energy. Simply defining the rules goes a long way towards eliminating any chance for a mutual mystification. At home, leaders need to teach their children how to be independent, healthy, stable adults who can function on their own. The real world certainly has rules and consequences for not following through on them. Our job is to create good habits while they are living at home that will continue to positively impact on their lives once they are out on their own. So as regards the great lights, the candidate is left with clear instruction as to what's important, what's expected, and what help is available. In the ritual and in exploring those, that available help, we move on to the working tools, which is a topic for a future discussion.